Jai Hind friends, I hope you're in the best of your spirits and becoming better every day. So, like all of the videos of this series, let us take 10 more questions in this video and learn a little more of the system of governance in India, which you aspire to become a part of very soon, or at least should be well aware as a citizen. It will be beneficial if you keep your copy of the Constitution of India close for reference as we move along. I also recommend you please pause the video as the question is displayed immediately. Answer the question yourself and only then proceed to listen. That is how you will improve your ability to recall as well as developing interconnections in your knowledge base. See, knowing just the answer is not the goal for us here. The answer eventually you will find out. And in this video, I have for you little work by some of the great economists in the world, which one should have knowledge of. And if not, then at least some awareness should be there even just as a citizen. And like all of the videos, do capture the end lesson of the video. The idea is to help you sometimes to revise random concepts, but also to assist in expanding our horizons and learning at a slightly philosophical and macro level. So even if you wish to skip some part of the talk here, do watch it till the end by skipping, or even much better option of increasing the speed. Alright, so let's take the first question here. Which of the following statements is or are correct regarding panchayats in India? The first statement says there shall be constituted in every state 3-tier panchayats irrespective of area or population. And then it says the seats reserved for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes are temporary, but those reserved for the women are not. Now, in previous videos also, there have been questions on panchayats, and I did ask you that you should read all the provisions of panchayats from the constitution. If not possible, then ideally you should be reading it for the urban local bodies, the municipalities as well, but at least panchayats, that is in part 9 of the constitution. So if you have done that, you would know that article 243b, which is the very second article there, the 243b, it states, it says that the 3-tier structure is necessary only for the states with a population of over 20 lakhs, right? So others may not have intermediate level, the middle tier, the panchayat samiti or similar names we have. So several states such as Goa, Manipur, Sikkim, and even union territories like Lakshadweep, they don't have a second tier. And recently, if you remember, I think last year something, Arunachal Pradesh Assembly, they passed a bill also to do away with their Anchal Samitis. Anchal Samiti is their intermediate level. So it's not compulsory. It depends on the area and population. Secondly, if you again have read the provisions in Article 243D that deals with reservation of seats, and specifically their clause 5, it very clearly says that the reservation of seats in favor of SC and ST is coterminous with similar reservation in the legislatures at the union and state level. Now we all know that after the 104th Constitutional Amendment Act 2020, which is this year, it has been extended by 10 more years till 2030. So this reservation of SC and ST is only valid as of now till 2030. But there is no such limitation on the reservation for women. See, this is a classic illustration of why it is important to refer to actual provisions of the law sometimes, and definitely the provisions of the constitution. Because see, every book and teacher will tell you that there is reservation for SC and ST and women, and which is compulsory, and OBC is not compulsory, things like that. But this interpretation of being temporary or permanent, this cannot come to you unless you solve such a question like this. But that is too much of ad hocism in your preparation and hence not good. Or you read the provision yourself. As I told you in this case, 243D5, clause 5. Just for the sake of it, please read it right now and see if it makes sense to you. By the way, it is also very logical to think that the reservation would be temporary, right? And however, for women it is slightly anti-intuitive because it is not temporary. Okay, as of now at least it's not temporary, and that's why in a question which is just a copy paste from the actual provisions, performance of 16% is actually not a good sign. So those who did not get it right, they got it right just by chance. Make sure you have read the provisions at least of panchayats. I cannot emphasize it anymore. Anyway, so let us move on to the second question, and that is the question whether a matter complained of in a House of Parliament is actually a breach of privilege of the members or the House of Parliament, and the necessary action to be taken is to be decided by. Now this is a question in which the worst ever performance of respondents on the channel has been seen. Though it is a straightforward question asking simply who decides if a privilege breach has taken place or not taken place. And most people I see, they marked the presiding officer. See, presiding officer's excuse me, role needs to be understood very carefully. It is largely to regulate the house and its proceedings. Okay, in matters related to breach of privilege, see that the house is the custodian of its own privileges and those of the members. So the committee of privileges, it makes recommendations and puts forth its findings, and then it is decided by the house, including if there is any punishment or not, right? So it is the house who will take such kind of decisions. Please understand this concept of privileges, because I find these are again areas where people are not very clear because not enough material has been provided in the books, etc. The house is the custodian of its privileges and the privileges of the members. Basic principle you should remember, you'll always do well. So with that, the next question, according to the Constitution of India, it shall be the duty of the Union to protect every state against, some options are given here. Now, in this case, the relevant article is Article 355 of the Constitution of India, where it says, so pause the video here, open your BEAR Act or whatever phone app you have, read it right now with me, okay? It says, it shall be the duty of the Union to protect every state against external aggression and internal disturbance, and to ensure that the government of every state is carried on in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. So, see, internal disturbance as a ground was removed for national emergency situation. Remember, under Article 352, it has been removed. And it was replaced by another term called armed rebellion, right? It has been replaced like that. But it still exists in Article 355. The term internal disturbance has not been removed from the Constitution completely. You should know that. And in that situation, it becomes a duty of the Union to protect the state, right? So, please be clear in that, and both of these are there. So, C should be your correct answer. Anyway, answer key you all have. So, the next question we have here is this. Under the Citizenship Act 1955, by which of the following ways can a person become citizen of India? Now, Citizenship Act has been very, very important, and because it's been in the news over the last 1 year a lot. So many things have been discussed. So see, this is how UPSC asks question. They will not ask you something that has happened or a provision of Citizenship Amendment Bill or Amendment Act, but actually provisions of citizenship to see how much of it do you actually understand, right? What are the principles behind citizenship, etc. And in such a question, 1/3 of the people getting it right again is not something I will feel very proud of. If you come to me, see, there are 5 ways to get citizenship of India under the Citizenship Act. Recall it. If you can't recall, then see this video further. So, by birth, by descent, by registration. Now, when you say by nationalization, there is no criteria called nationalization. Actually, the word is naturalization, right? So, that is where even the recent amendments have actually made some changes. And also the 5th one, what is that? I hope you are able to recall. That is by acquisition of territory, when Government of India acquires some territory. These are the 5 methods, right? So 1, 2 and 3 is the correct answer for this. And I hope you know, I think I did mention earlier that when it's by birth and by descent, these are the only 2 situations when it is the right of the person. For registration and for naturalization, it is not a right of the person. It is a discretion of the government to give you citizenship or not. It does not become your right. Now, in case of acquisition of territory, it's an option given to the persons in that territory, and if they choose to become citizens of India, and once they become citizens of India, it is considered as a citizenship by birth, because now that land belongs to India, okay? So, it will be given that kind of a treatment. But generally speaking, the right is only in the case of birth and descent. So, you and I, we are citizens of this country by a right, whereas people who are under registration or naturalization, like let's say Madam Sonia Gandhi, they are not a citizen of India by right, okay? So, please be clear in these kind of things. So, the next question we have, I hope you recognize the Phillips curve there, that should not have been difficult. The subject of health and sanitation finds a reference in which of the following lists? Well, Half of you are getting it right. We need to become better. But because see, health and sanitation is a major issue right now in our country, in the whole world actually, because of the situation due to this disease, COVID-19. So our notes should be fully ready. All basics is where the test is in prelims. Even though it may look like current affairs, as I've told you, it is always about some basics. So health and sanitation, one thing I'm sure all of us know, that it is in the state list. Definitely it is there in the state list. But little application of mind will tell you that how can it be both. So most of the things are not in, it's only in one of the lists. Though there are things which are in two lists also. That's something for you to figure out. So it's not in the concurrent list. And 11th schedule and 12th schedule, which deals with your panchayats and the municipalities, they both also have a reference of health and sanitation. See, it's a subject which is more of a field, kind of a regional and local issue. So naturally it's in the state, and then it also gets reflected in the 11th and the 12th schedules. So the correct answer here should be 1, 3 and 4. So make sure you have your notes sorted on this topic of health, right? So the next question we have is, according to the Constitution of India, there shall be a minister in charge of tribal welfare in the states of. This relates to Article 164 of the Constitution. And there are 4 states, Madhya Pradesh, and of course with that easy guess will be Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and Odisha. There is no such requirement in Maharashtra. So 2, 3 and 4 should be your correct answer. It's actually a provision of the Constitution itself. Why only these states? I think it's very logical. I don't have to elaborate. You can just see the profile of these states and you'll get better ideas. So let's go to the next question, and that is, which of the following statements are correct regarding the scheduled and tribal areas? That is, the 5th schedule areas and the 6th schedule areas. So understand, how the nomenclature works. Scheduled areas and tribal areas, 5th and the 6th schedules. So 2 statements are given, and actually both are wrong. What I did, I reversed the provisions. So while it says the 5th schedule of the Constitution provides for autonomous districts, no, autonomous districts are a provision of 6th schedule. And when it says Tribes Advisory Council is in the 6th schedule, no, Tribes Advisory Council is a provision of 5th schedule. See, understand, there is always more autonomy in the 6th schedule, right? So whenever you see autonomous district, right, naturally you should realize it is the 6th schedule. Similarly, in the second one it says, by default the union and state laws are not applicable to the scheduled areas, but in the 5th schedule they are applicable to the tribal areas. Okay, so when you have more autonomy, by default the provision should be no other laws will be allowed, right? So that's actually a provision again reversed in the second statement. So in the tribal areas, the 6th schedule areas, union and state laws, they are not applicable. But the governor, as you know, has the authority to declare that they will become applicable, or they will become applicable with some modifications. Whereas in the 5th schedule, autonomy is lesser. So by default, the rule will be that the union and state laws apply. Okay, they will apply, but it can be declared separately that they will not apply, or they will apply with modifications. So the default situation in the 5th and the 6th schedules areas, you should be very clear. Both of these statements here have been reversed. So the answer is simple, none of them. And less than half of you got it right. I hope now you will be better, but not in an ad hoc manner. You should be able to revise these things properly. The questions are just an opportunity to do that. Let's go to the next question. Which of the following are included in the directive principles of the state policy in the Constitution of India? First one says Uniform Civil Code. I'm sure it's very popular, discussed a lot. Article 44 of the Constitution talks about this. Separation of judiciary from the executive. Yes, absolutely. This is also there in Article 50 of the Constitution. In fact, this is why the Criminal Procedure Code was amended. Because even after independence for several years, judicial powers were with the executive magistrates also. And after the amendment, perhaps the only magisterial power, a big magisterial power that is there under the Criminal Procedure Code is the Section 144. Again, very popular in recent times. So I'm sure you know about that. Then protection of places and objects of national importance. This is also there in Article 49, just before the previous one. And promotion of small family norms, this is actually not there. So only 1, 2 and 3 are there, and the fourth one, this has been proposed recently. So this is actually current affairs. Recently means just 2 months back, 3 months back. So there's a private member bill that has been introduced by Anil Desai, a member of parliament of Shiv Sena from Maharashtra, in Rajya Sabha in February 2020. And it is to amend the constitution and insert Article 47A as a directive principle to the state to promote small family norms by way of providing tax and other incentives to the people who keep their family limited to 2 children and withdraw certain social benefits from those who have more than 2 children. So see, that's how again current affairs comes in our exam. The question is never current affairs, right? Yes, some of the recent events may convert themselves into a question, but most of the things that are happening, you should be sorting out and resolving with clarity your basic concepts, right? So anyway, I hope you learned something here. So let's go to the next question in this video, and that is, which of the following statements are correct regarding the duration of municipalities? Duration of municipalities, 2 statements are given. To be dissolved before the end of term, the municipality shall be given a hearing before dissolution, and if the remainder of the period is less than 1 year, it is not necessary to hold any election in that period. See, this is another example of how a question is just a copy paste from the actual provisions, and yet not even 1/4 of the respondents got it right. I cannot emphasize the importance of referring to the actual provisions of the constitution at least once. Believe me, no amount of ad hocism in your preparation is going to help you. It is not sufficient if you practice 50 questions on municipalities or 100 questions on panchayats like this one here. You got the answer, right? You know the answer here. Fine. But the next question will be on some other provision. Like you saw just a little while ago, the very first question of this video, 391, we saw that how hardly 8% got it right. Right? Another extremely basic question on panchayats. It is endless if you don't have a systematic approach, and hence one must have a plan and a step-by-step approach to preparation. Anyway, the first statement here is correct. It's a provision in the constitution itself. You can read yourself. The second one is wrong, again because it is not 1 year, it is 6 months. So even if you have read the provisions only for the panchayat, as I have asked you earlier also to do, you would know that it is 6 months, right? It is not 1 year here. And that is provided in Article 243E. Though that is only for the panchayats. But there is a similar provision in Article 243U, which is for municipalities, right? But it's okay if you have not read the specific provision for municipality. It's okay. But at least you should read panchayat, because you know it's very similar here. So the moral of the story in today's video, I think, is this, because it has come again and again. This is my suggestion, that go through the provisions of panchayats at least once and the additional provisions of municipalities. For example, 243ZD, 243ZE, if not the rest of it as well, right? Ideally read entire part 9 and part 9A, but at least, lack of time or whatever, read at least the panchayats. Because see, second time when you revise, of course, you'll be much smarter, as you would have identified already where do the provisions between panchayats and the municipalities diverge. So only the additional parts you should be reading there, because rest everything is very similar to panchayat provisions. Anyway, so please do that. I cannot emphasize anymore. That's why I say it once more. Please read at least panchayat provisions from the constitution itself. No book can make you learn so many things which you learn by reading it yourself. Okay, so going further, the last question we have for this video today: who among the following is the head of all the civil services of the union? Now that is the cabinet secretary. You must know that, as you are aspiring to become part of the civil services. Cabinet secretary is the senior most civil servant in India. Very similar to the chief secretary of the state government, who is the senior most civil servant of the state, right? So this is where you must also understand the difference between the cabinet secretary and the chief secretary, right? Apart from that, cabinet secretary is in the union and chief secretary is in the state. The role is very different. See, the chief secretary of the state is also the boss of entire civil service of the state, right? He is like the highest civil servant. So it's in the hierarchy, the chief secretary in a way is controlling the entire state civil service. They are very, very powerful. Whereas in the center, there's no absolutely equivalent term, at least no equivalent role that you have there. The role of the cabinet secretary as the head of the Union Civil Service is more of symbolic than real, like the chief secretary. Make sure you understand that. And we come to the end of today's video, and as always, I'll leave you with some message from my side. There is a Sanskrit shlok that I thought is very important in times to come, considering your exam is most likely approaching very, very soon. So, alasasya kuto vidya avidyasya kuto dhanam adhanasya kuto mitram amitrasya kutah sukham. Pause, read more, and I'll see you soon with the 10 more questions once I begin once I resume the test series again on the channel. Join the channel. The description is on the link is on the description of this video. So I'll see you soon. Till then, study well, enjoy, and all the best.